Hello, this is Ben Teacher from GCET, and today we're going to take a little trip to the Egyptian Museum. All right, so let's think. What can we see in the Egyptian Museum? Let's take a look. We can see mummies, preserved bodies. We can also see hieroglyphs, an ancient system of writing that we're going to learn about in a moment. The Sphinx. This is a very famous kind of statue from ancient Egyptian art and architecture. Treasure, all kinds of buried treasure. And sarcophagus or sarcophagi, the special cases that were used to contain preserved bodies in ancient Egypt. So before we get started, let's practice a little vocabulary. As we go, you can write down the Korean meaning in the little white space, just like that. All right, so first of all, guardian. A guardian is somebody who guards or protects something. Guardian. All right, paradise. Paradise is like a perfect place. So this looks like a beautiful tropical island. It's very pretty. It looks perfect, like a paradise. All right, and the pharaohs are very important in Egyptian history. This is a kind of Egyptian royalty, Egyptian rulers. Okay, so pharaohs. Discover. Discover is like to find something, or to be the first one to find something, or to find something that's been missing for a long time. Discover. All right, highlight. Highlight is to point out or emphasize something important. This person looks like she's important, so she's being spotlighted or highlighted. An artifact. All right, these are some different historical artifacts. Antique. Antique is just a really old object. So here we have an antique record player, an antique looks like a gramophone or a radio. Old antique objects. Phonics, right? The sounds from different letters. These are some basic phonics in English, like T for tiger, lion. So we'll learn about the phonics system in ancient Egyptian writing. Display, right? To display something is to show it in a nice way. It looks like this is a display for crowns. Someone is displaying crowns. Buried. This little guy is buried in sand, okay? Buried. Little dog. All right, and now let's read. Now that we have our new vocabulary, let's take a look inside the museum. A very beautiful atrium with all kinds of different artifacts. So the the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, what's that word? To show something important, highlights a number of Egyptian artifacts. So you can see all kinds of different artifacts right here in the main atrium. There's a Sphinx at the center, at the entrance to the museum. Let's take a quick look.
A visit took sites to life. A vast collection of ancient art from the age of the pharaohs dates from about 3,000
so it goes
to
back
1,000
thousands
BC.
of years. Really old antiques and artifacts. The Sphinx right here has a human head and lion body. Maybe you've seen pictures of these before. And they are, what's that word for something that guards or protects? They are guardians for important buildings like the museum. Okay, so let's look at hieroglyphs. Hieroglyphs are the ancient Egyptian writing system, okay? So each drawing is a sound that the letters make. What do we call that? A phonics sound in the Egyptian language. So let's take a look. Let's see if we can figure out what these hieroglyphs say. So here we have a guide to the different sounds. And let's take a look. Right here we have these two little things that look like feathers. And here they are in our guide. So these two together, they make the Y sound, like at the end of the word, like happy or C. So we have an E sound. This little thing that looks like a snake. Let's see if we can find it. Here we go. So this one makes a J sound. So we'll go ahead and put a J for the J sound. This one over here makes the I sound, the short I sound. All right, and this one's a little trickier, but somewhere in here, there's a square. There it is. This one makes a P sound like in pull. So far we've got Egypt. Maybe you can guess where this is going. This little half circle right here makes the T, like in tiger. So all together, what does that say? Egypt. Very cool. So we just learned a little bit of hieroglyphs. All right, let's learn a little bit more about these.
Through ancient Egypt, work right through to most ornate scripts, and it was used for tombs like this granite ceiling here, which is a period of time called.
All right, so they were used in important buildings and important places thousands of years ago. And now let's take a look at mummy rooms. The mummies are one of the coolest parts of this museum. All right, so what kind of mummy rooms are there? There are royal mummies, the mummies of ancient Egypt. What do we call those? Egyptian rulers, pharaohs. So we can see their mummies. And animals were also made into mummies. People made animal mummies for different reasons. Now, why did they make animal mummies? Well, they were not used for one of these things. Was it rituals, riding, pets, or afterlife food? So of these four, they were not made for riding, but they were made for other things, maybe so that the pharaohs would have pets in the afterlife. After they die, they take their animals with them as pets. All right, next let's learn a little bit about King Tut. All right, King Tut is the world's most famous pharaoh. He's very well known. Egyptologists, the people who study Egypt, discovered amazing treasures and grave goods in his pyramid. The grave goods help scientists understand royal life and how Egyptians were. What's happening to this dog? He's buried. All right, so we can learn a lot from his pyramid and his burial.
The boy king, pharaoh in history. Born over 3,000 years, turns out, quite a bit. We know he was a fashion of buckle at the waist. He was looking for scarab.
All right, so even though he lived a long time ago, we can still learn a lot by looking at how he was buried. He was a ruler for 10 years. And how old was he when he started ruling? He was actually just 9 years old. So he was a very young pharaoh. Okay. And lastly, let's take a look at some Egyptian treasure. All right, so many rooms. Whoop. To show something off, remember we say display. Many rooms display a collection of really old things we call antiques to see and enjoy. Okay, Egyptians thought they could go to a perfect place. What do we call that? Paradise, together with their buried treasure. So they thought they could take their stuff with them when they died.
This is the antechamber, looking exactly as it did when Howard Carter and other members of his excavation team found and recorded almost
All right, so there are a lot of
700
different
objects.
treasures in the museum. We can see thrones. A throne is like a fancy chair for a king, or in this case, maybe a pharaoh. Clothes and shoes. You have these very fancy sandals right here. Different jewelry. We saw King Tut wore a lot of fancy jewelry. And little statues like these. So all kinds of art, all kinds of accessories. Awesome, guys. All right, so let's see if we can remember what we learned about today. True or false? The museum holographs a number of Egyptian artifacts. The museum holographs a number of artifacts. Is this true or false? This one is false. The museum highlights a number of Egyptian artifacts. All right. A sphinx is a guardian for important buildings. True or false? This one is true. The Sphinx is a guardian, or it's seen as a guardian for important buildings like the museum. All right, the Royal Mummy Room shows the mummies of ancient Egypt's partners. Ancient Egypt's partners. Is this one true or false? This one is false. Not their partners, they're pharaohs, the ancient royalty. The grave goods help scientists understand royal life and how Egyptians were banded. How they were banded. Not banded. What's that word we learned with the little puppy? Buried, how they were buried, how they were put underground. All right, and many rooms display a collection of antiques to see and enjoy. This one's true. Yes, they do. They have these beautiful pieces of jewelry. All right, so let's review in our worksheets what we learned. So please circle the correct word to finish the sentence. The Egyptian Museum in Cairo highlights or hieroglyphs a number of artifacts. It highlights them. It shows them off. Egyptologists decorated amazing treasures or discovered amazing treasures. Well, they found them. They dug them up. That means they discovered them. All right. Each drawing in hieroglyphs is a phoenix sound or a phonics sound. Well, it's a sound that tells us how to spell a word, so it's a phonics sound. All right. Many rooms display a connection of antiques or alphabets. They display really old things. We call those antiques. All right. So next, we're going to match the sentence with the picture. We have 4 pictures here, and we have 4 descriptions. So this was the ancient Egyptian writing system. What do we call the ancient Egyptian writing system? We just read a word with it. It is called hieroglyphs. All right. An important building will have these as a guardian. So these are guardians for important buildings. That would be this guy right here, the Sphinx. Very good. Discovered treasures and grave goods in his pyramid. These belong to King Tut. All right, and lastly, Egyptians thought they can go to paradise together with their treasure. All right, guys, and lastly, let's be creative. So we saw King Tut's pyramid. What would you put inside of your pyramid? He was buried with jewelry and clothes and all these nice things. If you had your own pyramid, what would you have? Maybe your instruments, like your piano or your guitar, your accessories, your video games, maybe your bicycle or your skateboard, plants if you like flowers, maybe sports. Maybe you want to be buried with your baseball uniform or your soccer ball or a basketball. So you can go ahead and draw or write those into your pyramid to pick the things that you want to be with you in your tomb. All right, so good job, guys. I hope you enjoyed learning about the museum. See you next time.